This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of the Tapped In Sales Podcast, your podcast for beer distributors by beer distributors. I'm your hostess with the Moses Bud, here with Moneyball Ross and Data Mike. Boys, we are back together again. We got a couple little topics we're going to talk about today, kind of like a buffet a la carte menu of items that I'm just going to kind of throw at Mike and Ross, and we're going to see how they do. So if you want to see Mike work on his feet, today's the day to listen to it for sure.
Yeah, love it. No planning.
Ross is more like me, often wrong, never in doubt. So we're good on that front. But the kind of thing and a theme that I think has been coming back up, and this is kind of more of an on the ground topic that I think us three have seen, people I've been talking to on prospects, some clients as well. And maybe one of the things that we see behind the curtain around process and sales execution and just kind of like sales engagement is a word that has keep coming up. And I'm going to label it with a word called complacency. And I think there's some things that are going on in the marketplace that is driving some of this. I think we've seen some things with clients that are driving some of this. I think there's some anecdotal story that is happening a handful of ways around like, are reps oversatisfied? Are they undersatisfied? Because complacency can fall in a couple different camps. So let's start with the maybe reps are oversatisfied on complacency. And Ross, maybe I kick it to you. You might have a story or two that you've heard recently with talking to clients around where pay's coming in, what their expectations are, and that maybe reps are getting a little too complacent in the world, just earning the money that they like to earn, and they're settling in on this. Is that a fair statement or a misappropriation of a couple of the meetings that we've been on together?
Yeah, and I think a couple things can be true at once, right? And I think we got to pull in a couple different pieces. We've talked, it's been a lot of podcasts ago, but we talked about, kind of the cost of living, the generational difference, and, how people interact with their employer now versus maybe 20, 30 years ago. I think it's important to bring that back into this conversation. I think it's also important to recognize that this conversation that we're having on this podcast is being driven by our conversations with the employer side, the distributor management, right? Not necessarily coming up through the rep ranks themselves. So we're going to have to make some assumptions around this. But at the end of the day, going back to the piece of what setting the stage for this is what we're hearing from a lot of our customers specifically. And by no means does a couple of our customers represent the whole industry, but we're hearing a lot more of this than we have historically, which is that, they feel like the sales force is showing up only to the level which, that balance between how much effort to how much pay, it's such that they're just not willing to push the needle any further than what's necessary to do my job. And our clients are coming to us and saying, this is problematic because we're going to complacency, for lack of a better word, our way into 5% volume declines from now till infinity. And yes, we're in a cyclical decline in our industry, but that's not the case across all of our customers. And that's also doesn't have to be the state given our portfolios. Again, tying in other conversations we've had along the way here around our portfolios and how we go to market with our portfolios and take advantage of what we do and don't have. But yeah, I think the starting point here is the reps just don't really, again, this is perception. I'm not, and if sales reps are listening to this, they might be calling bullshit on this, but only showing up to the point where it's necessary to do my job and, stay employed and balance things out in a way that may not be optimal for the employer.
Complacency in practice looks like this in the world that you're thinking about, Ross, which is like, I'm going to do the bare minimum to get invited back to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I'm having these conversations with leaders on the sales side, just one today, around what we're doing isn't driving results. The reps aren't paying attention to things they need to be paying attention to. We've got more order takers than we've got as sales professionals, and we need a new way to engage it. And that is near and dear to my heart, because that's where we came to VXP as a client first, of that we didn't have the engagement. Mike saw this firsthand too. We didn't have the engagement. We didn't have the drive. And our programming around compensation and around how the levers that we were pulling were not driving results. And the levers that you pull don't always have to be quantity of dollars either. It could be process of dollars, what the method of the madness of earning those are, where the piles of cash are hidden. Are they in a volume and profit target? Are they in a commission structure? Are they in a PFP program? Are they in supplier incentives? We've even seen, Mike, in our world, we've seen that complacency is derived off of, bro, you have 80% of your reps pay tied to incentives and supplier funded programming. Why are we surprised the reps are not paid to paying attention to your strategic priorities, right? So complacency can take a bunch of different looks. And, Mikey, in your conversations with clients or with reps or team leads, how is this showing up in your world too?
Yeah. When you think about complacency, you immediately think of the lazy rep, or the rep just doesn't show up to do the work. But it could really lie within your seasoned veterans too, right? Somebody's been running the route for 15 years, has great relationships, hits most of their numbers, right? Gets comfortable with doing what they're doing. Meanwhile, the world around them is changing and the market is changing. And it's not just a lack of laziness, it's a lack of awareness at that point too, of hey, I really need to adapt. I've just been settling in, doing exactly what I do and what I know or think that I do best, and have failed to realize that around me things are changing and I can't adapt to that. But 100% right. I mean, when we're driving incentives, where are we really putting their mindset and their thoughts, right? Their drive. So thinking about that, you're going to go after the easy money every single time. And we have this conversation over and over again when we have 80% suppliers telling them what to do. I just on a meeting last week, and we were going over PFP and numbers like that. And I pulled the results of one rep and way up there, incentive dollars. And I was like, whoa, is that a reporting error? Do we need to dig into this? Is that reporting right? And he's like, oh, no, blah, blah, blah. We'll just use Johnny. Johnny hits every incentive. Johnny goes after every incentive. Meanwhile, on the leaderboard, volume profit, Johnny's towards the bottom. So where is Johnny's mindset at that point, right? Going after the easy stuff, settling in and knowing that all I need to do is get these placements, get these displays, I get paid. I don't need to worry about everything else.
There's a good topic too, if you haven't listened to this, just last week's episode 118, equal opportunity, not equal outcome. That is where Ross and Mike and I dive into the commission structure and the differences between a commission structure, and where I think the big takeaway is are your reps running the compensation program, or is the compensation program running your reps? And that, there's a better way we said it on the podcast, but if you want to learn more about that.
It goes back to that Buffett quote, which is show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome.
I'll show the outcome. Yes, exactly. So there's a ton of stuff that goes in there. And also, we've seen clients come off of, a complacent mindset and moving towards the professional work that we do with our clients to talk our book a little bit. But we've seen people miss their GP and GP per CE target month after month after month. And then they make a shift utilizing the exact same dollars available to the reps. This isn't about adding more or subtracting dollars off. It's the process of how the reps earn the dollars and how they understand how they earn the dollars. And then they go on a 16-month winning streak, don't miss a GP or a GP per CE budget for the next, almost a year and a half. So that is the kind of opportunity that sits behind this complacency. If it's sitting out there in your gut, it's probably in your sales team's lap. And you want to talk about that and think about that. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about how might I try to chase this down or understand this, first question I can ask myself, if I don't want to call and talk to about a Ross or Mike yet, a little exercise, right? First thing is like, when was the last time you changed the programming on your compensation, right? When did it change? What was the last time? What was that change? Number two, doing a dive on what your PFP or incentive programs look like over the last 3 to 6 months. How many of them are becoming recycled? And you're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Mikey, we see that all the time with clients coming into VXP around how they're doing the same thing over and over again, and they're expecting a different result. It's just stale then, right?
Yeah. And as a rep, you know what's coming, and it's stale for you as well. And I think complacency, when I was with the sheriff's department, that was one skill that they tried to teach over and over and over again, right? If you're in a job like law enforcement or anything like that, and you become complacent, it's very dangerous. You have to be aware of every situation, every single time, and be on your toes, right? You get used to random traffic stop. Yep, I'm going to ask for your license, registration. I'm going to get back in my car. All of a sudden, one day, it doesn't go that way, right? And your life is on the line. And that story, that mindset really translates over to reps too, outside of just PFP. How many times do you walk into an account and see POS that's so old, and the rep walks in there every week, sometimes twice a week? They're so complacent. They walk in, they say hi to the manager, they check in, they maybe talk to them a little bit, right? And then they go do their order, and they maybe do some merchandising, and then they walk out. Their eyes aren't drawn there like ours are. So coaching to that side of being complacent too is also super important. Not just every single month, this is coming up on PFP. It's like, hey, every single account visit, let's look at this. How has the cooler changed? Outside of your products, outside of your cooler doors, how has it changed? Are you noticing any patterns? Are you noticing competition expanding on one segment that you're not? Are you missing in something too?
And Ross, anything on your end, because you do a great job of, looking at opportunities like this and thinking through the audit and what I might want to look at when I'm doing like a compensation analysis to decide what other items should somebody be looking at if they want to really audit this on their own and kind of get a feel for where they're at too.
Yeah, I think what keeps coming back to me, and listen, I don't think there's random chance here, right? I think that the fact that 5+ clients came to us all within the last 30 to 60 days with the same word on their lips as complacency piece is not random chance. And I think another thing that we say a lot on this podcast is, play the ball where it lies. And I'm starting to think that things outside of our industry are driving people's mentality around it, which is, if I get 80% of my pay, I'd rather just reinvest in my own time because the money's not worth it. Mm. Right? The value of the dollar is low, is diminished relative to my time. So where a lot of these customers are coming to us from is, many of them came to us from a commission structure first. And the idea of a commission structure is you pay on case 0, case 1, right? First case, you get your money all the way through the last case you sell. So you sell 80% of what you sold last year, you get 80% of your money. So a lot of customers come to us and say, I want to take that same structure of starting pay very early up through goal. Then a lot of our customers come to us with a very, I would say, not a mindset of, hey, I want, even if you miss goal, I want to make sure you get money. Like, I want to take care of you, right? And then maybe that means that we start paying at 50%. What we're starting to see though is that either nature of, I want to be, set up a pay structure that's a safety net, a blanket, or because we were used to paying from case 1. I think both those groups of clients are looking at it and saying, I'm not getting what I want now, right? And how that's manifesting itself in the world of VXP is, I want to steepen up the curve. I want to make it so that you have to get to the 80 to 100% to get to your money. Right. And I want to get you closer to where you can make the money above and beyond. Right. So it's not to say, hey, I want to screw you. It's, I want to make it very much more painful if you don't show up. I want to get you faster and closer to the upside, which there's a lot of customers that come to us and they already have that feeling, which is, I don't want to pay you anything if you're down more than 20% versus goal, period. And I think a lot of our customers are now gravitating towards where those clients are. And again, I don't have good data now because this is new, that so many customers are starting to look at it this way, that is the direction we all need to go. Because again, maybe that's where the ball lies, that the value of the dollar is such that we can't have a slower slope that's paying you regardless of whether you're down 20, 30%. Maybe that world doesn't exist anymore or won't exist for the time being. So I think it's important for us to step back and look at it and just say, well, the ball may be in a different position now. And we, even as a company, have to look at it and say, okay, now that people are asking us what's the best way to run your commission structure within the VXP structure, that answer might be changing. And so I think it's important for us to be introspective around, what all this means and, what the optimal play is now.
Well, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this topic as well, because it's an interesting topic. It's something that's on people's minds. And it's also a good topic as, we're thinking about the latter part of the year, not just performance, but budget season's around the corner, planning season's around the corner. People are going to start talking about this. And I find it interesting, Ross, you're talking about the time value versus monetary value. And this goes back to another topic we've talked over and over again, which is just return on effort. What's my return on effort ratio? And if my additional effort to put in to get an incremental extra dollar isn't enough, then I'm going to take my time back and move on with my day and make my life simpler. This is no different than Bud and Sarah in school. The incremental effort it took for me to go from an 85% or an 89% in a class to a 92, a B, a solid B to a solid A, is a lot of effort for me. Not very good at school. I'm dyslexic, tough reader. But for Sarah and the effort for me, and as Mike knows my mom and dad so well, is just to keep them off my ass. That's the whole objective, just to keep them off my ass. And if I got a B or better, I kept them off my ass. I got C's, I got a little bit of gruff for that. But if I kept them off my ass with B's or better, then I was good. And I could screw around and not do all the extra work that Sarah did to get straight A's and be the valedictoria that she became. So like, that's a little bit of like a way I might be playing out for reps, right? Ross, I think is what you're saying, is that the time to put in the extra effort to get the money back, I'm not living in incrementally, it's not life-changing money for me to live an incrementally much better life. So I'm going to live the life I can, and I'm just going to buy more time by leaving a little bit of money on the table, buy a simpler life to leave a little bit of money on the table and move on with my day.
I mean, I think what you're perfectly describing is everybody's going to seek their equilibrium optimal, right? And for everybody, it's slightly different in how they value time, how they value money, how they value time with their family, how they respond to, let's say, being ranked and what that represents, the prestige of where they sit in the ranking, where they, value the monetary outcomes of what they're doing. But everybody's going to seek optimal for them. And I guess what I'm suggesting is that optimum has moved, not because of anything that any of our customers have done, just because of the way the world's changed. And everybody's going to act in their own rational self-interest. So the question that all of our customers are asking is, if that position is moved and more of my sales team feels like it's okay to be down 15-20% versus goal, and that's enough, and they'd rather exchange that money for their time, that's not a good position for the distributor. That's a good way to end up losing 10, 15, 20% of your volume every year and ending up in a really bad spot. And it's not to say that a lot of these people, a lot of our distributors came from a place where their heart was in the right position, right? Which is, I want to make sure that regardless of what happens, that you've got a paycheck. Put base aside in the variable. I want to make sure that there's a certain amount of money that you're getting regardless, a safety net. And I think it worked before for a lot of our customers. But again, the question we have to ask ourselves is, does it work anymore? And I don't have an answer on that. I think, again, that's why this is kind of a fun format for us, because we're trying to figure this out in real time.
And it still is working for a lion's share of our customers too. And I
Yeah.
think it's still driving the results that a lion's share are. There's a handful of unique, and like I said, a handful of unique situations where this has come up. And that's why we want to talk about it today, where they're not getting optimal results. And we're tweaking and managing and measuring how we're going to get more optimal results for those locations as well. And that's part of the fun of working with somebody like us who has, you know, tons and tons of data, tons of knowledge around how people are behaving and how people are driving results and what is and isn't working across the client base.
But
So we can kind of bring those insights.
let me ask you guys both this question then. Do you think that the clients that have steeper pay curves, are they having better success than the ones with shallower ones? On balance.
It's a great question. Yeah, I would say yes.
To me, it comes down to authenticity around who you are as a culture. Because
That's true.
there's a couple different things that are play around. If you're authentic to your culture and that you want to create that family friendly lifestyle where
Yes.
you're more of a lifestyle business, and maybe that's a bad word. That probably is a bad word, but
No, I
more
think people understand what you're saying.
more of that. Hey, we're not going to treat you as a number, and in return, like I need your best effort every day, no matter what. But you're not going to
Yeah.
be treated like a number here. And
Right.
if that's authentic to your style, I actually think that style, and that's actually is your style, and that's who you are. That is still going to continue to succeed day in and day out, because if you can gravitate and get people to opt into that, they're going to love you for that, and they're going to opt into that attitude, and they're going to want to succeed because you have a relationship with them beyond monetary. If you want to build a team and it's more authentic around pure performance, I think that later steeper curve fits that model better, and that pure performance of the best of the best eat and win, and the worst of the worst get weeded out. And every culture works a little bit differently. There's probably an element to demographic, particularly around age of the sales team as well. Not demographic from ethnicity. I don't think that matters at all in in the demographic word here. It's demographic of seasoned veteran boomer rep versus Gen Z and younger millennial as well. And
Yeah.
those two different people, and I'm thinking younger millennial because Ross and Mike and I are all older millennials. So think of a millennial born in 1990 to 1993 or later, right?
They're
Those
still
are
millennials.
they are.
Oh, crazy! I
They're
didn't know
they're though that it's that youngest millennial that is struggling to buy a home,
that.
right?
Yeah.
If
We've
you
talked
didn't
about that.
Yeah, if you didn't buy your home before 2018 or 2019, like you're a young millennial that is really struggling to find a home, you're much more aligned with Gen Z, even though you may be a millennial on paper, and you see the world much, much differently compared to a boomer and an Xer and that older millennial gen. So I think you have some soul searching around the age demographics as well, and your team, that might drive some of these different behaviors as well too. But it starts to me with authenticity, and like our operation. And Mikey, I told you this many times, I've told everybody this: you are not here at Atlas Sales to make the most money and to maximize your paycheck. If you are, you're in the wrong place, bro, because we can't pay the most. And there are plenty of other employers in Battle Creek where if you want to make more money, you should go work for them. And I'd name them out. You could rattle them all off. But if you want to be here where you're not a number, you got a problem, we got a solution, you want to be treated as a person, I'm here for you. And we have to step up to the plate and actually act like that as well too. You can't say that and then treat them like a number.
Remind me, where did you all have your slow start?
We
75.
started at, I think we started at 70 or 75, Mikey.
Yeah, I think it was 75.
It was still
Which I think-
late-ish.
Yeah, I would say that's average for our customer base today.
Yeah.
There are some that are before, and there are some that are average. That puts you right in the middle.
Yeah. Yep. And I like to see people start at least at 50, if not 75. I think 90 is a little late, but
90 is late.
90 is a little late, but like in that, 50, 60, 70 range usually gets the job done on balance. And is it fair that more of the folks that have brought this up started below 50 as well too,
Correct. Well,
at or
no,
below.
a lot of them started at 50, and there was a big cohort that, again, they moved from commission over, which means it starts at 0.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I think, again, going back to our episode last week, which I think you teased well, which is commission versus VXP, we got a lot more flexibility here. So I think that, you drink the Kool-Aid of moving away from commission, you get the benefit, and you're like, well, what else can we do here? And the natural thing is, well, I got to steepen the curve, right? Because that's more performant. But again, I go back to, I wonder if you would have asked me 6 months ago what's optimal, and I'm not ashamed to say that to customers on calls. I mean, obviously, I'm trying to match implementation to their business so that it matches their culture, their objectives, disruption, try to balance that versus overall success. Like, I'm doing that every day. But if you would have straight up asked me, what do you think the number is? It's probably, I would have said between 70 and 75 as a starting point. I'm wondering if it's now 75 to 80. I wonder if it's moved a little bit. Just, again, not anything that any of us have done, but just the world has changed. And again, maybe there's more of that demographic coming up, Bud, and entering the workforce, that there's just more boomer guys leaving.
Every time I talk to a prospect, we talk about turnover, and we talk about, if you have a turnover problem, what that looks like. And if you don't, do you have a bunch of seasoned veterans? And it's almost always like, yep. So then there's a turnover problem coming to you soon. And that turnover problem looks different, right? Turnover problem to me means that I can't keep people on my team. They are churning through my operation faster than I can hire them. Retirement and seasoned veterans aging out of the workforce is a different type of challenge, right? Now we're talking about replacing institutional knowledge rather than, I just can't keep people. I just can't keep warm bodies.
And it's to change your culture. It's going to change your culture.
It is going to change your culture overnight. And, we need to be thinking about that. And I know that the industry has a seasoned veteran opportunity, and that we have a lot of seasoned veterans and a lot of institutional knowledge right now. And as much as it is an opportunity, it's a challenge as those folks age out and do look to move to retirement. We are going to have to replace that institutional knowledge along the way. And there's a lot of relationships in our world that are built on, and the sales are built on those relationships. And we got to find a way to replace that knowledge and replace that institutional relationship side. The last piece here that I think, needs to be said is that if this lands with you, send this to your team and make them talk about this issue in your next management meeting. Like, do you have a complacency issue? This is something that you have to bring up, that you have to talk about, and you have to be willing to have the open and honest conversation with your team around, what does this mean, and is this driving issues? And if you're not willing to talk about it, you're only going to have the problem for longer and only going to have the issue for longer. And it's not going to fix itself without you addressing it in a few different ways. So we got to talk about it as a team. Mikey, how many times did we talk about it before we actually addressed it? But we were talking about it. We just didn't find a good way to address it until we finally met Ross when he had hair.
Yeah.
I'm trying to grow some more on my face. I'm trying to grow some more on my face to balance it out now.
Attaboy.
I think our conversation started long before even moving to VXP. When you challenged Tommy and I to look at our PFP program too, right? Before the commission side. I'm talking objectives. And, complacency can fall in there as well, whether it's like what we talked about, if it's the same thing that's on PFP every single month. If it's always important, then it's never important, right? And knowing what's coming up, knowing it, then it's just always, it's expected. Exactly what's coming. Too easy, super complacent, right? I do this, I get paid. I do this, get paid. And then on the other end too, either overly complicated or just unattainable and plain right stupid, right? When your objectives, and I'll be blunt here, when they're just stupid, and every rep on your team knows, like, why are we pushing this? Why are we doing this? This doesn't make sense, right? You're going to have a team, and I've met them. I've talked with reps out there who are like, our PFP program is so dumb. You can't either understand it, or there's no way I can get what they're asking for. And if I did, I don't even want it. I don't want that product in my account. Why is it being pushed on me so often? And then they're just going to shut down. And they're going to, that's where the complacency comes in. It's like, oh, PFP, I don't give a darn about it, right? I get what I get. If I hit it, I hit it. So there's two sides of that puzzle, and that's, that lead in there. We're back to Atlas. That's where you really drove us. It's like, hey, we have the same stuff on our point sheet every single month. Why? Right? And then we just completely tore it down to nothing and rebuilt it from scratch.
Yeah. We
And
did it
sometimes,
because we did it because it was easy too, right? Like the
yeah,
complacency can start at the top. You can also do some well-intended things as managers or leaders to drive complacency too. Perfect case that I did. We cut our commission by a third to sell all the product to the chain store. You don't think that didn't drive some complacency at the chain stores? Like, you know, you can do things that are well intended to maybe manage the cost of the business or manage the engagement in some way, shape, or form. You think you're doing it the right way, and the reps just react to it weird, or they react to it in a way that you didn't think they would. And you have to have some reflection, like Ross is doing, around why that is, and make those changes to make that better. And you got to be serious and real with each other every once in a while, and be probably the right word is vulnerable around some
mhm.
of the decisions you may have made as a leader to drive that complacency and to drive those challenges. I mean, we did that. We took away merchandisers at one point, made them stock all their shelves too, because we were like trying to save costs. We weren't trying to think about how to drive engagement, or weren't trying to think about how to drive complacency out. We were actually doing things to drive complacency in. And we're fortunate we were able to recover from all of those poor decisions that I made, but we had to have some reflection about it and be vulnerable about those issues that we created too.
I think Mike said something important, which is it's not laziness. And I don't even love the word complacency because it puts too much of the burden on the rep. For me, it's more they're optimizing their life and their time away from the optimal outcomes that you want.
Hmm.
That's a very different thing to think about. So if you feel like there's complacency, the question, and again, I think the humility or introspection that you need to have is if they're optimizing away from what's optimal for me, then I'm not set up properly. I think that's the right way to view it.
It's a way better way to view it. Now we need a branded word for it. Because complacency is so easy as a word.
Yeah, I mean, again, it puts the blame on the rep, which I think Mike said it great, which is they're going to pick the path that's best for them based on the structure that you created.
Oh. Well, if anybody's out there listening to this as a, kind of call to action and offer, if you're having these challenges and you want to talk about this, like we are an open book around this stuff. So like happy to talk about it. No sales pitch included around how you want to look at this. We could look at some data and some benchmarking information and really show you where the reps might be optimizing for themselves and not optimizing for the business outcomes that you're looking for as well. On some new stuff here that I think would be interesting to kind of talk about too, as on the back half of the episode, is that Reyes closes the 11 RNDC territories and Colorado. As part of this in Colorado, this Southern Glaciers is buying Eagle Rock, which we've talked about this already too. But Eagle Rock, Colorado was one of the first states, and they did Sazerac did a bunch of states all at once. This is many, many moons ago now, right? This is probably 2024, 2025, where they moved a bunch of product out of another distributor into a new alliance network of distributorships. Colorado was one of them where they moved to Eagle Rock and the AB side. Now, too, with Reyes's move and Southern Glaciers buying Eagle Rock, Colorado, and working on closing that transaction, Sazerac has moved their relationship yet again into Reyes. So Reyes is quickly becoming the second largest wine and spirits wholesaler in the country. And, as we've learned from their leadership team, they're looking to become larger and larger in this space. Anything that we see going on here, boys, that are beyond the layer here, we're going to see more of this, more shifts. Anything else we're hearing from the marketplace around, I mean, not just this move specifically, but just, the wine and spirits moves and franchise moves in general.
I'd love to hear Ross's take on this.
I mean, my knee jerk reaction is I don't love it because it's just more consolidation, more centralization. I mean, I think consolidation's fine, and I think we've had a lot of conversations about that being a general direction. But there is a point at which it becomes, and we've talked about this, where it becomes not good for the supplier. And I don't know if these suppliers recognize the danger that that represents. And again, this is not to say that Reyes is not a great operator. They absolutely are. But be careful how much power you give to the distributors, which is ironic because so much of the time I spend talking about how we as distributors have lost sight of how much power we have. It's a huge theme in our conversations. But you have to look at this from multiple directions. And if I'm a supplier, again, be careful.
Mikey,
Yeah,
anything to add?
it goes back to a lot of the NA brands, right? Where those brands were really built by relationships that were established, right? Hard work, boots on the street, and then that momentum's just handed over to somebody else. And we've watched a lot of those brands really, really slow that momentum down after those distributor changes. Some brands ultimately go away almost. So as a supplier, I mean, yeah, like Ross said, I would be cautious about that, but that's my only take on it.
Yeah, we don't want to lose the brand building aspect of what our industry is. And if
Mm-hmm.
you've got a portfolio that represents tens of thousands of SKUs, the odds of you getting lost in that portfolio are increasing.
Mm-hmm.
And again,
Absolutely.
we're not saying that these are bad operators. And again, it goes back to what we said earlier in this conversation is people are going to do what's in their own best interest and operate efficiently. And if you have 10,000 SKUs and hundreds and hundreds of suppliers, then you have there's less need or incentive to build the brands.
Another news segment here is that the Teamsters are getting involved on advocating for tariffs, looking for a tariff on Mexican beer specifically. I find this interesting. I think Missouri was the first state that actually has a different tax rate for American made beers over other beers as well. This idea is starting to gain hold. We're looking at right now as a federal request for U.S. trade representatives are asking for a tariff on Mexican beers. They publicly backed rates as high as 75%. Imports are one of only a few categories growing in the beer segment with Modelo Pacifico and Victoria. I mean, basically, this is a tariff targeted at Constellation, right? Like this is, that they are the Mexican beer import category in the U.S. And that although this is a, kind of a unique and an interesting idea, I don't know how this plays out in practice when you actually look at it from a category health standpoint as well too. And it obviously increases the price of beer for those products. Do we think that really impacts those consumers, that core consumer that is drinking that product, over the other consumers that are out there? I don't know if there's a lot of pricing sensitivity with your classical Modelo drinker, right? I think they're more on the higher end of that K-shape economy. It's already a more premiumized product versus like a Busch Light drinker or Mill Best drinker that's probably a more value, more of a value seeking consumer out there. It might be on the lower side of the K-shaped economy. I don't know, Ross. On this side, like, do we think this would really work? Does it even matter at the end of the day? Does it really play out a role, or is it just good talking points for good political for tariffs and for the Teamsters to say, hey, we're trying to do something about American jobs?
I mean, taxes as a whole, and especially targeted taxes, distort the free market. And there are artificial winners and losers. In this situation, the loser primarily will be, answer the question.
Consolation.
No, the consumer.
Well, yeah, the consumer.
Consumer will be the biggest loser in this because they lose choice, and they lose quality choice. And it's also going to allow the domestic producers to raise their prices and potentially reduce quality. I'm not saying they're going to, but they can because the They don't need to be at the same quality level to compete on price. So the consumer is the loser. Who wins? Okay, maybe some domestic production. The government gets more tax revenue, which they'll just piss away. So I don't think any of us benefit from that.
Tell us what you really think, Ross.
Yeah, give the government more money. They're so freaking efficient. Anyway, sorry. Anyway, I don't think the consumer should be punished.
Well, that's what's going to happen ultimately.
It's pricing get passed along.
The price going to get passed along. And answer Bud's question: does that consumer of Modelo and another brand, are they that price conscious? I think that they are. I think everybody's really price conscious right now. I mean, unless you're,
I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah, unless you've invested in AI and the rest of the places that Ross has told you about. I think that you are, and especially for the Hispanic consumer too. I feel like it's not welcomed right now in an economy that's super tough. So I don't think that it would drive up domestic beer volume by that much. I really don't. I think that people would just reduce the amount of alcohol or the amount that they're drinking.
And I think that people need to remember or need to step back and think about the fact that the United States is relatively unique in how much customer choice there really is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a product of a couple different things, right? Our 3-tier system and not being able to buy the shelf space has allowed there to be considerably more competition and variety. You travel elsewhere in the world, you walk into a store, there is a hell of a lot less variety. Why? Because the market can be controlled. The politics can be controlled. The shelf can be bought. The chain can be bought. So I think that why would we leave a unique position where the customer has an incredible amount of choice? There's more innovation. Brands are built, die every day, and they in the crucible of competition. Why would we do anything to walk away from that? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and if you are a diehard Hispanic beer lover, why would you walk away from that just because the price went up? You would just not purchase as much.
Let the domestic producers produce a better product at a better price and let them compete them out of the market.
To me,
anyway, I sound like an idealist, but I mean,
but, to me, I think it's a net drag on the category. Like it just be a continued net drag on the category. It'll price consumers to a position of like maybe they go try other things or don't drink alcohol at all. Maybe they move to different segments of alcohol or they don't drink at all. And we just don't need that kind of attention to changing behavior. We've had enough disruption and changing behaviors in our beverage alcohol category and specifically beer since 2023. We don't need to welcome any more of it. Like, I just don't think that we see any benefit by welcoming any more of it. Case in point, if you look at from Circana, as reported by Beer Marketers Insights, you can see beers down again through the July 12th, dollars down 1.1, volume down 2.2. That's down 13 of the last 15 weeks. Only 2 positive weeks since Q2 started. Same 4 segments have grown across every time frame all year. Non-alcoholic up almost 18%, super premium up almost 8%, cider up 5%. Who the hell is drinking all that cider? And imports up 0.2%, so imports are flat. Michelob NA was up 88%. Athletic was up 16%. Ultra Michelob, so that Ultra family was up 9%. And Yuengling has strung together 4 straight growth weeks as well. So, like, we continue to see the same brands and the same categories of products succeed over and over again. And we need a better, healthier category as a whole, not just these 4 or 5 segments or 3 or 4 brands. We need to bring, this is a rising tide lifts all boats problem, not a specific one player versus another player problem. And that's what I think we need to stay focused on as a category and as an industry is how do we get people back to occasions? How do we get people back to drive to socialize? Like what we talked about with Andrew from the BI. And that should be the more of the time and effort that we're going to put on our groups. Probably better off telling the Teamsters to, get back out and drive, socialize, and get out in the bars rather than trying to negotiate for higher tariffs on anything at all.
Well, while you were talking, it's funny because we were talking about winners and losers. And even if the Teamsters win in the short run, all you have to do is look at your guys' home state of Michigan to see what happens when you try to protect the domestic industry. It may work for a little while, but what ends up happening is you make a bad situation worse. Because you tried to keep the Japanese cars out. Guess what? They just got better, and they eventually came anyway.
Yep. And I was going to remind everybody he's talking about cars, and we forget as folks from Michigan, Mike, that we were the economic epicenter of the globe for the better part from the mid 1900s to the late 1900s. We made Silicon Valley look like a peanut with what we did in our little world. And now it's like we forgot that. We forgot that we build shit and we do cool shit around here, and we completely screwed this up and have no clue. Like Birmingham, Flint, Rochester, these were like some of the wealthiest hoods in the world. And now we have completely forgotten about that in a short generation. And
you don't even want to stop for gas in some of those towns anymore.
And Bloom,
Well, yeah,
we'll stop for gas there.
Yeah,
that'll be okay. But these are some of the best places in the world, and some of the wealthiest places in the world. And we did these things around financial engineering and try to manage it, and it didn't work, and it's actually proven out negative. And Ross is 100% right. Find a way to compete, continue to make better products, and you will continue to win. At the end of the day, if we're trying to solve this problem through some kind of economics, financial engineering, it's just going to turn out to be a bad thing. World Cup is over. We're off to our next thing. We're not done talking about World Cup. We got a couple of new things that we're going to bring to life for fun in the next couple of weeks with some on-the-site knowledge and kind of unpacking that. So I think I'm going to put that on the agenda for everybody as well.
We should give a shout out to our newest, most loyal listener that watches, not listens, but watches every single episode and gives us live feedback.
Oh, yeah. Who's that?
Tommy,
yes.
Our boy Tommy has now watched every episode, got caught up from, I think, episode 1, and watches us on YouTube on his TV in his living room, and will literally send me pictures of his TV with us on there and give me live feedback.
Good. Are you taking his feedback?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
is he using his finger, and is he pointing, giving us feedback that way? Yes.
I haven't received a video, a managing video, do this, do that yet. Normally, he used to do that too at the office. I'd catch him taking a picture of his computer screen to send it to the guys, to the reps. I'm like, dude, you can do a screenshot.
Way more fun to do. Way more fun to use your finger and point at a report and tell them what they should be doing in video and text that to them.
Well, thanks for listening, Tom, and thanks for the feedback.
We love Tom. Thanks for listening, my man. Well, if you like what we're doing out there in listener land, continue to listen, subscribe, share with a friend. If you have any listener questions you want to send our way, call bullshit on anything we talk about, you can hit us up at info@vxptech.com. That's info@vxptech.com. Boys, you guys rock. Thanks for joining me for another episode. Everybody out there in the listener land, cheers.